Welcome to episode 3 of Godless Moms podcast. We're so glad to have you all here. My name is Janice Selby, and I am also known as Wise Counselor on Twitter and at Divorce Religion on Twitter. And I'm teaming up with my pal, you all know, Courtney Hurt, Godless Mom. Oh, hello, there's my kitty cat. I'm wondering if he should be in the show. And I'm so glad that we have this chance to talk with you today because we're going to be covering the QAnon conspiracy. We're going to be looking at how it affects families and parenting. And yes, this is Steve coming to you live, wanting to say hi. Courtney, how are you doing this morning? What's up with you, girl?
I'm doing good. I think I had a bit of a rushed morning, kind of like you did. Tried to do my nails, but they got wrecked because I don't have any patience for that. Hello, Max, all the way in Russia. That's awesome.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to talk about this because this is something that's really affecting our world right now, and it's it's wild and crazy to read about it and stuff like that, but it's also it's terrifying that people actually believe it. How are you doing? I heard that you had a birthday this week.
I did. I am officially 51 years old. I can hardly believe it. I look so good for my age. Holy cow.
Happy birthday.
So, thank you. I did have a wonderful time. And yeah, actually, when I was doing some research this week too for our topic, I was just really floored by how deeply impacted some people have been by this and how they have taken it to heart. I mean, it's destroying marriages, breaking up families. Some people are violent with it. It's a big topic.
It is, and it's just it's really sad, and it's unbelievable, and it's just wild. It's such a crazy topic, but I think we should probably start by explaining what QAnon is in the first place. Did you want to give that a go?
I can tell it as I understand it. So in being Canadian, I hadn't really thought about it too much because I haven't seen too much in our media about it, but did recognize that it's a group that seems to have really taken root in the United States, started about the time it seems that Trump came into office. And there are all sorts of different conspiracies that that this group seems to encapsulate. So you can be a member of their group and believe all these different things, from lizard people to the one we hear about most, which is the idea that atheists and Democrats want to kill Christians and eat their babies. And some people really truly believe that. And I feel so sorry for those people, because to live with that much anxiety and fear that someone's going to bust in your door and take your children away and kill you, there's a horrible amount of needless anxiety and fear to live with. So yeah, and it's seems like they get prophecies that are dropped. I want to call them Q-tips, but they're
Q
not.
Drops.
They're Q drops. They're Q drops. And then the followers of Q, they're watching all the time for these kind of goodies, these breadcrumbs, but then they're so sort of cryptic that someone has to interpret them. So to me, it sounds a lot like religion. It's very similar to religion. Nobody knows who this Q person is, if it is a person, like one person. And so there's a lot of biblical and Christian type of language. And this is one way that the many Christians, unfortunately, have been sucked into this whole conspiracy group, because the language used is so spiritual sounding. That's what I got on it so far. What did you find out? Anything else that would kind of explain it?
Yeah. I think it was kind of triggered by this one press event with Trump where he said the word the storm, or the coming storm, or whatever, and they kind of grasped onto that. And it was sometime later that on 4chan, a user named QAnon, or Q, and everybody on 4chan is anonymous, so it was Q and anonymous, started to post about all of these conspiracies and claimed that they had Q level security clearance at some high government organizations and stuff like that, and basically claimed that like the Democrats and the left and all of the stuff have like this secret conspiracy going on not in plain sight, but in the shadows. They have like underground caves and stuff like that where they harvest the blood of children, which I guess is the purpose of that is to keep them young and healthy. And
that's not the secret to my youthful appearance. That's not what I'm doing.
No, that is not what I'm doing. But it's basically the idea is that they're just predators. They harvest and farm kids, I think, is one of the explanations. They farm kids for this kind of adrenaline. I can't remember the name of it, but it's some kind of substance that they get from kids to keep themselves young. And of course there is questionable treatment of the children, and that they're basically running all of this stuff in the background, and it's a big giant pedophile ring as well. And that Trump, the ultimate belief here is that Trump was basically sent by God to purge the US of this filth. And that's what they believe. The storm was that Trump was going to, after in January, before Biden was inaugurated, he was going to have everybody rounded up and arrested, like Obama and Hillary Clinton and Biden, and everybody was going to be arrested and thrown in jail. And of course that didn't happen. And since then, there's been quite a few QAnon believers who have realized that it was all a hoax, that they've been lied to, and they're going through quite a bit of emotional pain over that, because a lot of people, and this is what we're going to be talking about today, a lot of people who fell into this rabbit hole and started to believe all of this stuff, they alienated their family over it. And they were willing, because they felt it was such a righteous cause, they were willing to part with their family with whom they had otherwise had really great relationships. And one of the saddest things I think that I read, and I'm sure you did too, was that subreddit called QAnon Casualties, which is where everybody writes about basically losing family members to this. And it sounds wild and crazy, because I mean, it gets even crazier, because they talk about like lizard people and interdimensional demonic pedophiles, reptilian overlords. They believe that bleach is a cure-all. Ellen and J-Lo are Satanists, and politicians and celebrities are all eating babies. Like, these are the things that they believe.
And Tom Hanks is dead, and he's been replaced with a body double. That's a big one that I saw too. I'm like, really? Wow.
I mean, on the one hand, it's hilarious. When you're reading this stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious, right? Like, it sounds like, you know, a spoof on a sci-fi movie starring like Woody Harrelson. But it's real, and people really believe this, and people
and
are
obviously it's dangerous.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And when we think back to what happened on January 6th and the storming of the Capitol building, and people actually were killed when that happened. So, and I mean, that's not necessarily everyone who was involved in that was a Q follower, but a lot of them were. And then there's also the crossover with the Christian nationalists and the neo-Nazis, like the white supremacists. It's just become like a huge mix and a hodgepodge of these people with very extreme beliefs. And as you say, it seems humorous or entertaining, because for us on the outside, we're going, how is that possible to have that belief? But I know exactly how it's possible to have that belief, because I was a fundamentalist Christian for over 40 years, and I interpreted the Bible literally, 6-day creation, Adam and Eve, talking snake, talking donkey. And as soon as we suspend our need for evidence, and we start opening up to the idea that miracles can happen, that is a horrible doorway through which suddenly you can believe anything. Well, if anything can happen and be a miracle, then anything can happen. Of course, there can be lizard people if you're not demanding truth and evidence. So I do see how it could happen, because I feel like I was a victim of a massive conspiracy theory known as Christian religion.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely direct relationships between the two, and this is something that I've been writing about for years. I think one of the first blog posts that I wrote about it was called "Religion Needs to Be Destroyed," which is harsh language, but my reasoning behind feeling as though religion is dangerous is because it requires you to accept something on faith, and once you do that, just once, you no longer have a standard of evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And people will like, who don't have a standard of evidence, can be led to believe many, many different things. All you have to do is believe that God that you believe in so strongly requires you to do something bad, and that thing is no longer bad to you. And that's it. And that's kind of what's going on here, because Trump is their God. And, when he says that we're going to be there on January 6th, you show up on January 6th because you don't need evidence. You don't need to know why. You don't need to know any of this stuff. You just show up and you've got to defend your leader and your beliefs and all of this stuff.
Right.
And that's ultimately what I think happened on the 6th. I think that you're right. It wasn't all QAnon supporters, but there were quite a few of them there, and they've arrested quite a few people who have admitted to believing in these QAnon conspiracies.
Oh yeah, and I mean, to be clear, not all Christians buy into the Q stuff. They just don't, but a lot of them do. Enough of them do that it's really creating a lot of distress and trouble in the United States in particular, but we also have QAnon followers in Canada, which is distressing for us. And we know that there are certain types of people who are maybe more drawn to embracing conspiracy theories. So certainly we know that people who are lonely are vulnerable. People who are depressed or anxious or fearful are vulnerable. Tell me some of the other things that you found out when you were looking into this and trying to see, well, who would be interested in this type of conspiracy theory? Did you come up with some folks who might fall prey to that?
Yeah, well, I think it's also people who kind of consider themselves like intellectually superior, and I know this because I was one of them in my 20s, and this might come as a shock to a lot of people, but in my 20s I was totally into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I used to have a website called Secret Destroyers, which is from a line it was from a line in a Smashing Pumpkins song, Secret Destroyers. But it was more for fun. It wasn't like serious. I didn't take it seriously. It was more just about, like, it's kind of like telling ghost stories, right? Like, you don't necessarily believe them, but it's yeah. And it was fun, and I grew out of it quite quickly.
Right.
But I remember thinking, like, if you could know these secret things, then you're kind of, you're privy to this secret information that other people are not. You're special in a certain way. And that's, I think it definitely, and we know people in our personal life who are like that, who just think that they're so smart, and we have the secret information, we have the right information and stuff like that.
If that's not religion, I don't know what is.
Yeah, you're the chosen ones.
Excuse me.
Yeah, essentially you're the chosen ones, right? You've been chosen to possess this special information that other people don't accept. And so that's that, and people who are lonely. And I think that this pandemic has absolutely 100% exacerbated the whole QAnon thing, because people are at home, they have nothing to do, they're feeling alienated from everybody else, and so they're hopping on the internet. And then, of course, the internet is designed in such a way to keep regurgitating the same stuff and showing you the same stuff over and over and over again. And so ultimately your algorithm is just compounding that information, and it's making that feeling stick around, and you feel like you're in the know. And so
yeah. And it applies definitely people who are feeling powerless. They feel socially powerless, or they're isolated, pardon me, socially. So maybe they don't have a particular friend group or community that they belong to. And it's the sense of belonging also that is so attractive to people. And one thing actually that really hit me last night when I was thinking about it was that it's almost like the ultimate immersive role-playing game. So I'm not a big computer game type person, but my former husband got really deep into World of Warcraft. And actually, you know, he's my ex-husband now. It caused troubles in the marriage. But looking back on it now, I see that when everything else around him felt so shitty and he felt so powerless, he felt like he could be someone when he played that game, and he was whatever character he was, and he could slaughter people and all this kind of stuff. It really struck a chord in him, and he felt powerful and confident. And this is also an issue, I think, too, for the people who fall prey to the QAnon. And we certainly saw it in some of the folks who showed up at the Capitol building in their like costumes, you know.
Yeah.
And you could just see the sense that they felt powerful, maybe for the first time in their life.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that especially with the pandemic and similar things, I think religion goes along these lines as well, that people feel like if, for instance, the pandemic is human created and intended to harm us in some way by other humans, it puts humans in control, you know, and if you accept the reality of the situation, which is that this virus is just a product of evolution, and it's, you know, it's not, there's not any reason for it being here. It's just kind of circumstance and random circumstance. And to believe that and to accept that is to admit that we are at the mercy of nature and our environment, and that we don't have control. We don't have ultimate control, and humans don't like that feeling, despite the fact that that is the truth, that we are animals living on this planet, and not everything on this planet is you know, the best thing the best thing for us, right? Like we are not in control, and people like to feel that way. And I think that goes along with like religion, because a lot of religion is centered around the afterlife and death. And it's because people don't like the feeling of being helpless and knowing that they're going to die and pass on to oblivion.
Yeah, you've really hit the nail on the head with that one. And I've said many times that what we crave as humans is certainty, security, and order. We will do almost anything to feel that there's certainty, security, and order. And so we're living in times that feel perilous. There's been a lot of social change and upheaval, which makes us anxious and uncomfortable. And religion and cults and conspiracy theories, they offer a degree of kind of explanation, right? And then we feel like there's some order. Okay, we understand. And when I was a Christian, if something bad happened to me, I could feel, oh, okay, well, God he wants to use this to teach me something, or God is punishing that person. That's why, you know, something terrible happened to them. So that feeling of certainty, security, and order really comes into play. And also, as humans, because our brains are efficient and we want things to be efficient, we want simple answers to complex questions. And that's another thing that a lot of the cults and religions and conspiracy theories offer.
And you know, the beauty industry is the same thing, because people feel like they can fight aging. despite the fact that you really can't. I mean, you can appear to not be aging, and I
It's called
obviously
a filter, people.
but you're still aging, and you're still going to die one day, and there's nothing you can do about that. But people don't like that feeling. They like to feel like they have control, and that's why the beauty industry is such a massive moneymaker, because it gives them that feeling that they're controlling how fast they age. And I think on some level it makes them feel like they're kind of almost cheating death in a way.
And that's such a turnaround. That really is a product or byproduct of the advertising industry, because it used to be, when you have gray hair for a woman, you're considered a crone, and that was a position of power and authority. It was good to be in that space, and now we'll do anything to fight that because we worship at the altar of beauty. That's a great topic for another show.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I have a lot to say about the beauty industry, despite the fact that I love makeup. But anyways, the sad thing about all of this, though, is that it's like, despite the fact that we can understand people fall into this and why they are susceptible to believing these things, it's still ruining relationships. And I think that there's been a lot of people like asking, how do we talk to our family members? How do we reach them when they've fallen so deep down this rabbit hole and they can't listen to reason? How do you deal with that situation? And I think you got a question from somebody about that, essentially asking, how do you do that without ruining the relationship?
Yes, from a concerned parent, but who is also a child, a woman who's so this lady is raising her own children, and she had a reasonably close relationship with her mother, but now the mother has absolutely bought into the whole QAnon conspiracy, just hook, line, and sinker, and it's creating such a rift between mother and daughter. And it actually kind of goes along with the idea that there are levels of attachment. This is something I touched on in my Divorcing Religion workshop. So if you're just kind of at the first stage of attachment, you're curious, you're interested, but you still have your mind open to things. By the time you're down at the fourth or fifth level of attachment to an ideology, it has completely fused with your identity. So anything, any information that people try and give you to show you that that ideology is wrong, you are very threatened by that because your identity is now fused with that ideology. So we have a chance in the first and second stages that we can still potentially draw people back. But once people are at that fourth or fifth stage, it becomes very, very hard. And often, as in my case, it required a tragedy or a series of tragedies to shake me loose from my cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's a lot of people who are kind of coming out of this QAnon fever. It happened after the January 6th storming of the Capitol. So it's definitely not an easy thing to approach. You can't just walk up to somebody in your family who believes this stuff and say, that's not true. None of this is true. You certainly can't just present them with evidence. You can't debate them. It's not going to have any effect. And you have to, I know a lot of the audience here are atheists, and you have to think back to when you deconverted and how you felt. When you fully believed in your religion, if somebody approached you and said that's wrong, that you wouldn't have responded in a positive way.
Right. Or we thought that the devil had control of that person, and the devil was blinding them so that they couldn't see the truth, which of course we were the carriers of the truth, the guardians of the truth. So I would definitely say it's good practice anyway. When we are speaking with people, no matter how well we know them, let's be respectful, because the minute someone feels disrespected, so like you saying, oh, I can't believe, how do you believe that? That's so stupid. Well, you're showing disrespect to what they believe, and that really will often shut them down. And what we want to do is always try and keep the avenues of communication open with these people. So for the mom who sent me her email, she has a child that she also has to think about protecting. Her mom's viewpoints have become so extreme and just so bizarre. And because mom feels scared, it's very much like religion. Mom feels like she has to save, or grandma feels like she has to save her grandchild by teaching them this stuff. So mom has to make a gentle boundary there, gentle but firm. And so you can say, Mom, I love you. You're so important to me. I am concerned for you. And I'm not willing to talk with you anymore on this subject. Let's talk about when I was growing up, or when you were growing up, or, other kind of things that aren't so loaded, things that are common to us. But I don't want to talk anymore about your conspiracy theories. And the grandma, in this case, she might accept that, she might reject that, but the daughter can also say, I want you to know I will always be here for you. If a time comes when you start to have doubts, I will be here for you. And that's something we can provide. We can make sure when that person does come up for air, or they start thinking, is this true? Maybe I don't believe this. They're having doubts. We can be a person that they come to, because we haven't burned that bridge.
Yeah. And I think for situations that are not exactly like the one with the question that you got, there are other situations where people want to know, how do I get through to this person? The first thing I think that you have to do is determine what your goal is in talking to them or addressing this with them. If your goal is to be right, there's just no point in doing that. But if your goal is to help the person, it's going to require a whole hell of a lot of patience, and it's going to require a lot of, not taking what they're saying as seriously as you would like to. You need to resist the desire, and I know so many atheists have this because I'm the same way, but you need to resist the desire to say, no, that's not true, or actually. We love to start lines with actually, but you need to resist the desire to debate the specific points that they're bringing up, and you have to resist that, because they're not going to see reason. And like you mentioned a few minutes ago, that when you were a Christian and somebody would come to you and say your religion is not true, you would think that Satan had taken control of them. Well, like that with QAnon believers, if you come to them saying that what you believe is false and stuff like that, and you start attacking their actual beliefs, they're going to see you as part of the machine that has like the underground child harvesting caves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They're going to think you're in on it, and then they're going to trust you less. So just number one is resist the urge to debate the specifics, because you're not going to get anywhere. You're validating that as though it's something that should be debated, when it's completely ludicrous. And you're just going to get their back up, and they're going to put a wall between you and them, and they're not going to hear anything else you say from that point forward. So you have to kind of soften your approach and not set your ego aside. Like I said, don't worry about being right. Worry about helping the person, and
let's be curious.
Yeah,
that's right. Let's be curious. Let's find out and explore what this ideology means to them. How is this becoming, like, what is it about this new belief system that is so intriguing and important to them? How is it going to change their life? So we can be asking these questions and saying, oh, well, tell me tell me more. And certainly you can say, oh, well, I think you used to feel that way about blah, blah, or whatever. But just like you said, the idea of being gentle, it's not about our ego. It's not about being right. It's about, we care very much about this person. So we want to know what they believe, and especially if we're talking about our kids falling into something, or our parents, we want to know what they believe, and we want to try and keep as good of a line of communication and loving as we can with them.
Yeah, I think that's really important, because obviously one of the issues here is that a lot of the people who fall into this stuff are people who are feeling alienated and alone and bored out of their minds because of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one thing in common with a lot of them, and that is that they are lacking in human connection. And it could be because, they are just, people who like to keep to themselves, or it could also be because of the pandemic that all of a sudden their social network has been cut off, and the bottom line is that a lot of them are starved of human connection. And you can start, like, by fighting their descending into this rabbit hole. You can start fighting that by insisting on more connection with them, and it's difficult in a pandemic, but you can still do it through FaceTime, Zoom, all of that stuff. Just do it more often, connect with them more often, make it meaningful, spend actual quality time with them, and try to avoid the topic of politics and what you believe in, and just hang out with them, tell them what your kids are up to, talk about what the next hairdo you're going to get when you finally can go to the hairdresser again. Like, I need to.
You're hitting it right on. The aspect of community is so important, and so many people are joining or falling into these groups because they are so desperate for community, as you said, in the time of the pandemic. And now they have more time to be at home on their computer. And the algorithms feeding you more and more extreme videos is a huge part of it as well. And what we want is to make sure, when they are able to come out of it, that we provide a safe place for them to land. A lot of them are humiliated. I know when I stopped believing and I left Christianity behind, I felt embarrassed. I felt sad. I suddenly was missing a whole bunch of relationships that had been very important to me for so many years. I had burned some bridges with people. I had a real thing about divorce. If you're divorced, you can't get remarried. That was like a cutoff thing for me, and I wasn't going to support anyone socially who had the nerve to get remarried. Well, guess what? Now I'm divorced. You need to provide a place where people can be then deconstructing the beliefs that they had, and they can talk to you about it, or make sure you have some reference places that you can send them, like to the sub forums on Reddit that you were talking about, or books on just recovering after conspiracy theories.
Yeah. And I think that you hit on a good point there too, about the whole algorithm and social media really feeding into the fever that they're in. So one of the ways that you can, there's a lot of the people who are into this are older. There's a lot of younger people who believe this stuff, but a lot of them are older, like our retired parents who are home all the time, and they are not necessarily technologically savvy, and so they don't really understand how the algorithm works. They don't understand this. So one of the ways that you can actually teach them and have them start to question what they're seeing is by showing them your feeds and how different they are from their feeds, and then ask them, say, why do you think mine is so much different than yours? And as long as you're posing it as questions in a nice conversation, it's kind of like the Socratic method. They're going to start to see holes in this, like, why do I keep getting these videos about QAnon but nobody else does? And and it can help them start to understand how the technology works. If your QAnon believer is one of those older people that's not necessarily tech savvy, that could be one of the ways that you do that, is by showing them your feed and how different it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought I wrote down, I thought this might be interesting for our viewers. 5 stages of conspiracy thought belief, like how people go down that rabbit hole. Is this a good time for me to quickly go through those?
Yeah.
All right. In the first stage, someone has figured out something's not quite right. Something's not right in society. They can feel that it feels off, but they're still keeping an open mind. In the second stage, they're becoming skeptical of official explanations and traditional authority, and they start, they're starting to close off a little bit, but still you can often gently draw them out. By the third stage, they're seeking out alternative sources of information. They have a great mistrust already for authority. They're not believing official narratives anymore. And they're also starting to look for other people who believe the same thing. Mm-hmm. By the fourth stage, nearly all official or mainstream accounts are rejected. They're really becoming hardcore with what they believe. They're only affiliating with their enlightened community. Oh my God, like non-believers are either asleep or sheep, right? This is how they're referring to the rest of us. And by the fifth stage, they are absolutely embracing what's improbable, supernatural explanations. They're rejecting all mainstream accounts. And that's the point, like I said before, where their identity has become absolutely enmeshed or fused. And that's the one where it's really, like I say, I think it often takes a tragedy, or like we saw with the Capitol riots, to shake people up. And then just having President Biden's inauguration and nothing happened. And then January 20th came and, nothing happened. And people have been waiting and thinking that Trump's going to come marching back in. And it's not happening. And some people actually even have, unfortunately, taken their own lives. They've been so distraught that they bought into the conspiracy theories, and they burned so many relationship bridges. They just didn't think they could go on. And some people also have been so consumed by their own terror and anxiety that they have taken their own lives.
Yeah.
So it's really quite a serious thing, even though it seems outlandish and outrageous, but it's really no more outrageous than religion, and not just Christianity. I mean, Islam, any of those, you have to have some pretty extreme beliefs. The moment that you open yourself up to the idea of supernatural anything taking place, you're really opening a door to a lot of nonsense, and you become very vulnerable.
Yeah, very, very true. Another thing that you need to watch as well with your loved ones who are involved in all of this and believe all of this. So like, you don't want to debate them in person. Along those lines, you don't want to be debating this stuff on social media, or making fun of it even on social media, anywhere where they can see it, because that's going to have the same effect. They're going to get their back up. They're going to think that you're a part of the machine, that you're the enemy, and that's going to end your trust with them. It's going to put that wall up again, and they're at that point again, they're not going to hear anything you say after that. It's just going to turn into, the teacher from Charlie Brown. That's all it's going to be for them. Yeah. So, and I know it's hard. It's hard to, I'm lucky that I don't have anybody in my life who believes this stuff, so I don't have to worry about it. But it's like, when you see that stuff being posted on social media, it's hard not to be like, whatever. Like, you and I, we live in the Okanagan, and there's a news outlet here called Castanet, and in the Castanet comments, there's always the QAnon supporters in there, the anti-maskers, and there's always conspiracy theorists, and they're always saying, "Oh, you sheeple, just follow the government, whatever it does," and blah 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 blah. so definitely resist the urge to debate this stuff in public, because it's going to have the same alienating effect on that loved one as debating them in person would be. And if your true goal is to reach them and have them hear you and have them break free of these beliefs, then you can set aside your need to kind of debate this stuff or even poke fun at it in public.
Right. And it's also important for us to be talking with our kids. I mean, age appropriate, right? But particularly our teenagers, the same way that we would warn our loved ones about how dangerous people online might be fishing for them, and people aren't what they always pretend to be. And we have to teach our kids that in this day and age. That's also why we need to be teaching them that these different conspiracy groups and cults are out there wanting to also manipulate you and drag you in and drag you down. So we want to be sure that they have an understanding that they need to be looking for evidence, that they need to be doing research. And we're frankly having a crisis of authority right now. That's part of what this issue is, where people are rejecting traditional ideas of authority like scientists and medical professionals. And so, of course, then we also have a lot of people from the alternative, whatever movements, medical, and even some of the crunchy moms, like the granola yoga types, some of them also have started espousing this. And the doorway for them was they think that vaccination is harmful, which of course it's not. That's been debunked. But that's a doorway that they got in with this whole thing.
Yeah.
So we need to be on our guard. We need to be learning about it and teaching our children to know when they're being manipulated.
Yes. Teaching them critical thought is, as I've said like a million times, it's a way to inoculate your kids against getting sucked into not just religion, but any of these weird, strange ideas that people are altering their lives for and stuff like that. I think that that's a really, really important point. I think teaching them how to check their sources as well on the internet. Like there's some really easy ways to tell whether or not you're reading something that is kind of full of shit. The beauty is that Facebook and Twitter are now starting to label some of those things, that this information is questionable. Here's some alternative information. That's a really good way to start bursting your echo chamber and getting outside of your own little bubble. You can start to expand your horizons that way. Like there's been a few times that my parents have sent me articles about stuff that they had questions about, and within minutes I could see that they were like, the domain says it was an American news station, but I went and I checked it and it was registered in Russia. And there's just different ways that you can figure out where that information is coming from. And I think explaining to your kids as well what evidence is. Evidence is not, somebody told you who was told by somebody else, who was told by somebody else who might have a person who works at the CIA type deal. That's not evidence. That may be convincing to some people, but that's not evidence. It wouldn't convince a court of law. It wouldn't convince, a scientist in a lab. You need to have a level of a standard of evidence before you accept things. And, there's always things in our lives that we'll accept at face value. Like, if your mom comes over and said that she had granola for breakfast, like there's no reason to question that and require evidence for that, because it doesn't have any repercussions in your real life if you believe it. But But when it comes to something that requires you to change your life, it requires you to change who you talk to, who you accept, who you trust. It requires you to change your job. It requires you to pay money. It requires you to change how you're raising your kids. All of these things, those are the things that you absolutely need to have evidence for. And it needs to be demonstrable evidence. Personal experience is not evidence because our brains are not trustworthy. Mine is not either. Nobody's is. It's not saying that it's just people who believe this stuff who have brains that are untrustworthy. Over and over and over again, studies show that eyewitness testimony is 50% of the time, even when the person is 100% convinced that that is the way they recollected it, 50% of the time it's wrong. And that's why we have so many innocent people in prison, and we need the Innocence Project.
Yes. We're all vulnerable.
Yeah, we all are susceptible to our brain failing us and our memory failing us. And that's why personal experience isn't good enough evidence. You need demonstrable evidence that anybody would accept as evidence.
And, you know, even prior to the whole QAnon deal, I started sending out to, well, particularly to some older folks on Facebook who would maybe be passing around something that they thought was really important. And I would say to them, have you gone to Snopes? Do you know what Snopes.com is? Have you gone there to see if it's real or if it's just a rumor? And they were very grateful and thankful to find out about Snopes.com.
Yep.
So
I've been caught in the Snopes trap a couple of times. Yeah. I've shared something on Twitter and then somebody's like, nope. And I'm like, whoops. But I always admit it. I'm happy to. Yes. I like those instances because it gives me an opportunity to promote that kind of behavior in public. When you're wrong about something, you just own up to it.
That's right.
But part of the problem with Snopes, though, and this was my mom told me this, that Snopes is run by they and that they're so she doesn't believe that Snopes when it comes to like alternative medicine and stuff like that, because they're in on the big giant conspiracy with big pharma and all the doctors and stuff like that. But something that I think has made her question some of her ideas. And I actually saw this point in a lot of the articles that I read in preparation for this, is that when I talked to her about it, I totally lost my train of thought.
It was about your mom and Snopes, but she was saying they run Snopes. Has that train been derailed, my friend?
Yeah, it's gone.
Oh boy, it's not just me. Okay.
I know I wrote it down though.
Okay.
It was. I don't remember, but basically the idea is to create the doubts and grow those doubts and ask them if they could be wrong about it. And this is what I was going to say, is that when a conspiracy requires that number of people, right? That number of people, if the entire medical and scientific industry was in on a conspiracy to trick us into getting vaccinated or trick us into using certain medicines that are not good for us or keep us sick, which is something that they say a lot. If they were, that would require millions upon millions upon millions of people who work in separate places. They work far apart from each other. They all speak different languages. They have different cultural norms and mores. It would require all of them to keep their mouths shut. And there's a reason why in every single country there are, and in most huge corporations, there are whistleblower policies and whistleblower laws. And that is because whistleblowers exist because humans can't keep their mouth shut. Humans don't keep secrets. And if there was a massive, massive conspiracy amongst all scientists, all doctors, all nurses, all pharmacists, everybody involved in the medical industry, then those leaks would be happening, and we would know that these things are happening. And something else that I asked my mom as well, is that, and this is it's wrapped right into QAnon, because in QAnon they do believe that we're being kept sick, or that, you know, we're being made sick by all these different things.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if we were being made sick or being kept sick by they, why is it that our life expectancy goes up every year by like 2 years? And why aren't we sick? Like, I'm not sick. And if they are actually trying to keep us sick and make us sick, they're not doing a very good job of it. Like, it's just not working. And like, one of the things that my mom will say causes that is chemtrails. It'll be like,
oh my God.
If chemtrails make us sick, they're gonna make them sick too, right? Like, it's not like I don't know. But that's definitely something that made my mom think, was saying, if it required that, if there were that many people involved in a conspiracy, someone at some point is gonna blab.
Yes. I'm so glad that your mom actually brings these ideas to you. It's just as important that we want our children to bring things to us that they're learning, or because we need to know, we need to be on the same page so that we can direct them and guide them, like you were just saying, giving them these gentle questions. Yeah. I feel like also street epistemology might also have some really great ideas. What's their website? Are they .com or .org, or because I think that will be a great place for some people to start.
You can actually search on YouTube for street epistemology, and you're going to find Anthony Magnabosco, and I would definitely suggest starting there. He's amazing at what he does. Basically, all he does is he approaches people and just asks them what they believe, basically, and gets them talking about what they believe. And he doesn't counter anything. All he does is ask them to expand and expand and expand and unpack and unfold. And through that, people hearing their own words start to realize this is a little nuts.
and he does it in such a polite manner. Like, he does not come off like some jerk, some know-it-all jerk. I'm here to like rip your beliefs to shreds. He's just having them kind of expand and think about things, follow things to their more logical conclusions. I think he does a great service.
Yeah. Dr. Osiris on YouTube just asked, and if they are trying to kill off the working class, then how are they going to survive without us? I don't think they quite thought it through, which is true. That's something that I think a lot of, especially Americans and Canadians, forget, is how much power the working class holds in our societies. Those people with all that money, they don't make money without us. Like, they need the labor force to make that money, and that means that we have all the controls. So they're not going to be killing us off.
I see Neil's joined us for a minute. He's on a break from his band. I
know. Yeah. Okay, I just gave Neil his wrench, I think. Yeah, there it is. He's got his wrench.
I've been so engrossed in our conversation, I have hardly even looked over at the side to see the conversations that are going on. I hope people are learning something from what we're saying, or if people have questions for us, we'd love to know your questions, your experiences with conspiracy theories or anything similar.
Yeah. I think another good way to approach somebody in your life who believes this stuff is to acknowledge that sometimes conspiracies are real. Like Watergate was a real conspiracy. But then when you acknowledge that some of those conspiracies are real, show them the difference between conspiracies that are real. What happens in the news? What happens, at law enforcement and on the level of the government? What do you see happening when there's a real conspiracy versus this conspiracy that you believe in? Like, there's a lot of news coverage, there's evidence, there's in the case of Watergate, there was audio. We heard it with our own ears. It's not just the suggestion of audio either, it was actual real audio. And there's a whole podcast now that you can listen to called Slow Burn, which is an amazing podcast for learning about Watergate. But it's it's good to point out that believing in conspiracies is not that crazy. It's just that this specific one, there's big holes in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
It
And
can
I think
also, sorry, go on.
no, you go ahead.
There's something also, religions and conspiracy theories and cults. So they'll make prophecies, as Q made, has made prophecies, and then when those things do not come to pass, they'll move the goalposts. They'll say, "Oh well, now we have a new revelation," or "You misinterpreted that last one. Here's really when the end of the world is going to come." Jehovah's Witness cult that has done that numerous times said the end of the world is coming on this date. No, sorry, we meant this date. No, we really actually mean this date. So that also can be a sign, things for people to watch for if they're trying to, verify, is this true or not true? And so for when our loved one is wrapped up in whatever it is that they're believing, we want to be listening when they say things in the conversation. Maybe they'll express that they got reprimanded at work because they were talking about this conspiracy, or they've lost so many people in their life, because the other people, they don't believe this. So those can be gentle openings for us to ask them more questions and potentially get them thinking, and just to let them know that we love them and care about them, and we're here for them.
Yeah. And I think finding some kind of common ground with them as well. And if you've already done that in the past, reminding them of the common ground that you share. Like if there's a kid in your life that you both love and care about and are concerned about, then you can talk about that kid and what they've been up to lately, and the things that they've done at school and stuff like that. But definitely finding common ground with these people is a good idea, because the conspiracy that they're believing, the theories that they're believing, are making them look at you like you are the enemy, like you are alien to them. And you can reel them back in by reminding them that you're the same, and that you have things in common, and you can kind of ground them that way.
Yep.
I think.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. And it's just so heartbreaking anytime people choose, their ideology over their relationship. And this happens in religion all the time, but now also we're seeing it with this conspiracy group. It's just heartbreaking. I can't love you anymore because you're gay, and that's against my religion, or I don't support that, or like I was doing and saying, I won't be friends or have interactions with people who are remarried because the Bible says, you should never be remarried. I harmed people by making that choice, and I've had to eat a lot of humble pie and make apologies. And some people would rather not have anything to do with me because I hurt them too badly. And other people are very grateful that we can kind of pick up where we left off and resume a healthier friendship.
Yeah. Yeah, I think too, like when you say that you burn bridges with people and sometimes they don't, they can't let go of that. That's something that's also really important too, is that when somebody's so deep into this, they are going to say things and they're going to do things that their real self would never say or do. And it's really, really difficult to separate that person from the belief system. But if you want to hang on to that relationship and be there for that person when they're done, you have to be able to see what they're saying as it's not really them saying it. They're kind of being compelled to say it by the things that they believe in, the things that they're reading. And there could come a time when they finally see the truth and they see that they've been sucked into something that's a big giant lie and all of this stuff, and they're going to need a support system, and to just let them know that no matter what they have said to you, within reason, of course, if they're being violent and stuff like that, you've got to cut off. But you have to be able to sort of compartmentalize the things that they might have said to you that might be hurtful.
Yeah.
And realize
thinking
that it's
has
not
been
necessary.
hijacked. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like talking to a drunk person. It doesn't mean that there's an excuse that it doesn't make it an excuse that they should be able to say whatever they want to you just because they believe this stuff. But at the same time, you know, you can move forward after they've broken free of this a lot easier if you can just forget about that and let it go and realize that it was not actually them saying that stuff.
Yeah, so true. Wow, this has been such an interesting conversation, because I see there are so many parallels with various religions and different cults, and people don't like to think of religions as cults, but you know, pretty much they are. And people need a safe space when they leave those groups as well. So be that safe space for someone if you can.
Someone on Facebook, Lee Barbo, said, I haven't been in contact with my family, which is 3 sisters, 1 brother, nor mom, deceased since Obama's second-term campaign. I've washed my hands of their toxicity, which was present for many years since 1980 due to extreme evangelism. When you put your beliefs in a position of importance greater than your family, you don't deserve a family. And that is definitely true. For a lot of people, and you obviously you have to make your own decisions about where that line is drawn and when they've crossed it. And you should definitely have those boundaries where, you know, if they say or do something that crosses that line, then you have to cut those toxic people off. And that's totally fair. And that, you know, much like what we talked about last week, that's not you making that decision, it's them, because they're fully aware of the fact that they're alienating people and they're making those decisions. But something like, if they're just saying smaller things and they're a little bit hurtful here and there, that you have to remember that sometimes they're saying this stuff because they care about you. Like, they're so afraid of what's going on around them. They're afraid that it's going to hurt you, or it's going to hurt your kids, or something like that, that sometimes that alone, the love for you is driving it. And it's really hard to see it that way sometimes. And definitely, if you can't deal with it, or if they've gone too far, if they've crossed your own personal boundaries, it's totally okay to cut toxic people out of your life. You don't have to keep toxic people.
Sometimes you must do it because you have to protect your child, or you have to protect yourself. You protect your own mental health. Setting boundaries, very important. Enforcing those boundaries, and those will look different for different people.
Yeah. And another thing to keep in mind too is that if you are trying to kind of extract people from this type of thinking, that it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to see their minds changing overnight. And again, go back to when you left religion. If you left religion, go back there and remember how long it took you to go from your the acknowledgement of your first doubt to calling yourself an atheist. How much time had passed. For most people, it's a great deal of time. And that's going to be the same thing with these people. So patience is key, but again, have your boundaries and be willing to protect them.
And if it's our child in our own home, and we are concerned because the threat is coming from the internet, then we have the ability as parents, we can actually cut off, you know, their internet use at home or whatever. And sometimes that actually is what's required. People need time to be away from the constant bombardment of these ideas and theories. So you're too young to remember this, I'm sure, but in the 70s and even the early 80s, there were professional people that you would pay to steal your child back from the cult. Say the Moonies was a really big cult back then, but there were lots of cults. And these people were called deprogrammers, and they would go and kidnap the person from the cult and then spend days or however long with them trying to deprogram them, keeping them away from the group and away from, you know, the things that they've been reading and the intense schedules that they've been keeping. And of course, it was the families, the loved ones of these people who were paying for this service. And the service, you know, it doesn't exist anymore. It's obviously frowned upon to be kidnapping anybody. But it's just that same idea that if people can just have a break from that constant bombardment, that can be helpful for them.
Yeah,
and the trick of how do you do that? How can you encourage that? If it's your mom, I mean, are you going to go over there and when she's not looking, you're going to deprogram Fox from her TV channels or whatever? Some people have done it.
One of the ways that I think you can accomplish that is by having you know, regular visits with no devices, nothing on, no news on, nothing like that. And I read a couple of stories though that doing that can be difficult with QAnon people because they're so hooked to their devices and their news feeds and stuff like that, and they will freak out if you're trying to take their phone or their Facebook away.
Yes, and it does. We can, in a sense, become addicted to things. Like we can have like a process addiction. So someone who like compulsive gambling or whatever. And this actually is similar to how QAnon works, because anytime the Q makes their Q drop with their next prophecy or breadcrumb or whatever it is, it's like a hit of adrenaline. The followers are rushing in, trying to figure out what does it mean. They're having to interpret it. They're feeling important. And the drops of information are not like on a regular schedule. So it's that intermittent reinforcement also that is similar to if someone is really hooked on gambling. So there's similarities that people can become addicted in a sense to religion. And it's some of these same things we're talking about. They get in trouble at work because they're proselytizing all the time. They're getting in trouble at home because they're not giving the money they're earning to their family. They're tithing it all to their church. So they've really been so caught up and so entrenched in this mindset. And we can become like that about many things. We can become extremist and radicalized about.
Yeah, that's why teaching critical thought in children is where we start to fight all of this stuff. Because if you're raising a critical thinker, they're going to require evidence before they believe things, and that's going to prevent all of this. But I think something that is important to note is that in a lot of the stories that I read, and I'm sure some of the ones that you read, is that some of these people can be driven to violence or plans of violence. They could be stockpiling weapons. And in these situations, you need to recognize that your safety is more important than getting them to see the truth. And you have to be prepared, to walk away, because you don't want to get hurt in the process of all of this. So you can walk away, but also you should be prepared to talk to the authorities. Like in the event that somebody that you know is stockpiling weapons, absolutely you should be calling the FBI and letting them know about this, because you're not just protecting yourself in that situation, you're protecting a lot of people, because who knows what they're planning. But that's definitely something to look out for with QAnon people, sadly.
And what if it's a husband or a wife? So one part of the couple has really bought into this, and there are children involved. It just becomes very dangerous and very sticky, and you might have to actually develop a safety plan, which can be important and be a lifesaver in those types of situations. But do take it seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Don't wait just because it's your husband or your wife. And just absolutely involve the authorities, because they're going to be able to help you stay safe and keep your family safe, but also keep anybody else safe who knows what they're planning to do with this stuff. And these people are so far.
They do. They have to proceed with caution if it is a spouse. If there is a danger, then that spouse could run off with the children or harm the children or harm them. They really have to put thought into what's the safest way going to be for me to exit this situation. And there may be groups or a therapist that can help you as you covertly develop this plan.
Yep. And it's really difficult to accept, but you have to accept that sometimes you can't save people, and you got to know when to let it go. And it's sad, but it's true. You're not going to be able to rescue everybody. And I'm sorry that that's the truth, like I want there to be a magical way to just free these people from this thinking, but there's not. You can just do your best and promise to be there for them, providing they're not hurting you in any way or threatening you, and that's about it. And just hope for the best, really.
Now, did you, in your research, when I was doing my research, I came across, I think it was the end of a Psychology Today article, actually, and the author had put together a reading list related to conspiracy theories. That if your loved one is trapped in one, or if your loved one is trying to come out of one and you're looking for places you can send them, references you can give them, will we be able to put a link to that or put some of those things when we post this podcast episode?
Yeah, I can add it in the description in YouTube and on Facebook. Tomorrow. I'll add that, or not tomorrow, after this. I'll add that, the whole article, and then people can click on that.
Very good. Yeah, that could be helpful for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've covered QAnon. I mean, we could probably go on and on and on, because we could start to get into the nitty-gritty of all the little beliefs and stuff like that, but that's too much crazy for me, I think.
This was so interesting and so enjoyable. Thank you for wanting to explore this with me. I hope people really got a lot out of it, and I hope that people feel supported. I wish that I could just give you, 3 easy steps to pull your loved one back from the clutches of, some harmful ideology. But there aren't easy steps. Once they get to a certain level. The best thing you can do is just the things that we've been talking about.
Yep, that's the bottom line, and it sucks, but it's true. But we're glad that you joined us today, and we have down below in the description there is a link to the podcast page where you can actually submit your own question. Would become the topic of the next podcast episode. So go ahead and submit your questions there, and we really enjoy having your questions during the conversation as well in the chat. So thanks for joining. Hey, my puppy's here. I got my puppy.
Oh, puppy. Where?
She's right. There she is.
Oh, look at her. She's being shy. Oh, hello. You think she's got a slipper?
She has a slipper.
Just like a dog.
Yeah. Well, I am going to go and add that article to the description, and thank you everybody for joining us. Make sure that you are following us on Twitter, and I know that that's been going on in the banners down below. Thanks, John. That's my bearded half. He's been doing that for you guys. And
you're going to have t-shirts and whatnots available at some point for us, right?
Yeah, whatnots.
We're going to have a lot of whatnots.
Yeah, we're going to make t-shirts with the logo on it, and that's going to be available in the shop at godlessmom.com shortly, maybe today, probably today. I work fast.
That's so exciting. All right. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. It's been great.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.